and its impact not only on the economy but also on various sectoral areas and also programs of government. The department were called upon to identify key areas of their programs that could have been affected by the lockdown, and also a number of projects that were already on hold during lockdown, with a view to ensure that some adjustment, some suspension be made to those areas. As a result thereof, our focus today will not be the repeat. We are not finishing the presentation that we had. Therefore, we would expect the focus just to be on focal areas and programmatic areas that were affected, that were adjusted. So therefore, I think what is critical is to get a sense in terms of the amount of the funds that have been moved to and from which program. The department and the entities should provide elaborative rationale as to why funds were moved from a specific program to another program. Furthermore, departments and entities should provide the committees with clear implication on programs where funds have been retracted. Most importantly, from our side as members, is to engage with those areas that were affected through suspension and adjustment. Having said that, honorable members, and also mindful of the fact that honorable members had a long day, particularly our members from the NA, our sympathy with the impact of the program on yourself. As a result thereof, we are going to call upon Honorable Minister. He will be followed by the chairs of the entities. Because of the long day that members had, and because of the program, I'm going to propose that let the DPSA prevent first, so that at least the minister is then able to make a reflection in terms of all areas that politically account to him, in essence the entities. And then thereafter, we take entities, all of them. We take entities. As the entities present, honorable members should note the areas that they would want to engage on, so that when you are given a platform to engage, then you raise your questions from one, the department, two, the National School of Government, Public Service Commission, and the center, so that at least we are then able to ensure that we are done with the presentation, and then you follow the engagement, and thereafter wrap up. That is the approach that I'm going to propose that we take, mindful of the fact that we are not rehashing everything new. We are merely focusing on the adjusted areas. There's one presentation that is long, many slides. I think is the National School of Government. My humble appeal is that they must focus mainly on adjusted areas. I suspect it's from slide 23. So it will be important that let's just zoom into programmatic areas that were adjusted, that were affected, where money was suspended. Over to you, Honorable Minister. Do you have the minister?
Yes. Unmute, Minister.
Yes, sorry. I hope I'm audible now.
You are, Minister.
All right. No, I concur with you fully that it has been a long day, and therefore we need to try to be as economic as possible. I accept your guidance. We just want to say two things, that indeed the adjusted budget has a number of challenges, or is posing a number of challenges to the whole of the portfolio, the PSC, DPSA, CPI, and CPSI, and the School of the National School of Governance. But what we have decided to take as a line, one is to say, let us stay put in terms of our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And where the year of COVID hits hard and causes a snag or a slowdown, we will have to update our plan, but via the annual performance in any of the oncoming years, so that we make up without necessarily changing. That's the first point. The second point, the annual performance plan itself is going to be affected. The first thing that affects us is the cuts that have been imposed by Treasury, with us accepting because of COVID and related matters. And therefore, there are those cuts that have had to be negotiated. But nevertheless, I mean, they hit quite hard, I must say, such that our annual performance plan has had to adjust and adapt to such cuts. We've had to try to be as choosy as possible in terms of those things in the annual performance plan that will have a less impact if derailed a bit to the overall strategic plan, prioritizing them so that they get as little affected as possible. But where then we couldn't do anything, we've then had to succumb to that. But even there, we will try and make up. And so basically, it's heavy cuts with impact on the programs of one kind or the other. So with that, I think I must hold it, Chair, and the DGs will then come with details and present those areas that you have guided us to talk to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. DG?
Thank you, Chairperson, and good evening to the honourable members. I'm just trying to upload the presentation, Chairperson. If you can just give me a minute. Can it show the presentation, Chairperson?
Hello?
Chairperson, can the presentation show on the screen?
Yes. It's on the screen now. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. As directed, Chairperson, I'm not going to go into much detail for the department, so I'm going to jump the first slides. Basically, it's confirming what the Minister has said, that we have decided as the portfolio not to interfere with the strategic objectives and the deliverables over the 5-year plan, over the 5 years in our strategic objectives, but focus on the annual performance plan. So for Program 1, we will not be changing any of the targets, and we will not be dropping any of the targets in the annual performance plan. All our 6 targets for Program 1 will still be able to achieve. I think it's 6 or 7 targets we are planning to achieve all of them. In terms of program 2, what here we are proposing is a little bit of a different wording in terms of our target. Initially, we thought we will be able to implement the full organizational functional assessment tool, but what we are saying currently is that we are going to pilot with certain departments instead of implementing entirely. Program 3, we have a deliverable around the wage setting mechanism. The budget cuts have affected us in the sense that Treasury has taken back about 80 million, and part of the money, it's money that we needed to invest in this project of wage setting mechanisms. But in consultations with the minister, there is an agreement that we have to really scrap internally for funding and ensure that the personnel expenditure review is done before the end of the financial year, because delaying that may also have a dire impact in terms of how we manage the wage bill going forward. Another program in program 2 that we're looking at is this big project around reducing the cost of public administration. We have certain responsibilities as DPSA in relation to that. Other departments have other responsibilities. Other departments like, I think, Justice on litigation, Public Works in respect to government accommodation, National Treasury as well on other areas. However, as DPSA, one of the key areas of our focus is around the reduction of the wage bill in the public service. So what we're confirming here is that this project is continuing, and as the department, and it's linked anyway to the issue I raised earlier on about the personnel expenditure as well. If I move, Chairperson, program 4, we have no deliverables that we would like to drop or change. Program 5, there is a target there regarding Batupile program. What we are basically indicating here, we are reviewing the wording of the target to focus on the revised Batupile program, including the public service month and the Batupile awards. And the second one on the APRM, what we are here proposing, we are adjusting the quarterly deliverables a little bit to allow us for consultations in relation to the country program, APRM country program, South Africa program. Cabinet has approved the NGC, which is the committee that's supposed to run the process, and now we're starting full scale with the process. Minister has already convened a meeting with the NGC during the month of July. Program 5 again, here in terms of the business modernization program, again, we are revising the language that we are using in our quarterly targets, because there's some work that we need to put in place before we get into the actual business process modernization program, which is an MTSF target. There are some milestones that we need to deal with internally in the department. So this is what we are proposing. Program 6. Here, most of the stuff is this that relates to the technical advisory unit, DAO, the lifestyle audits, the database on public service employees appointed, and discipline management. So we're not interfering this. We're not changing anything in relation to these deliverables. These are critical governance matters in the public service. We do, however, there is a deliverable that talks to job competency framework, and what we are fine-tuning here is the language, because before the job competency framework, we need to have an occupational dictionary that is developed by the department, which is what we are busy with currently in the financial year. Chairperson, from my side, that's all. I would like, with your permission, to then hand over to the CFO, who will go through the financial implications. Thank you, Chairperson.
My pleasure. CFO.
Thank you. Thanks, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members and Minister. Good evening. I'm just quickly going to go through the financial cuts, the financial reports, which includes the cuts. As the DG has indicated earlier on, that we actually did not drop anything. We're just adjusting in terms of the timeline, in terms of our APP deliverables for this financial year. But just for the sake of what we have been requested to present, I'm just going to take quickly through the honorable members, on the reduction. The reductions that were effected for DPSA is 80 million, as indicated in slide 18. and we actually indicating the cuts per program. These cuts also include compensation of employees. It's both personnel budget as well as goods and services budget, which is 80 million. The Center for Public Service Innovation, which is CPSI, they will present it later on. But because they are part of our vote, the cut that was effected, it's 6 million. So all in all, 86 million was the budget reduction from DPSA vote, which is basically equivalent to 15% of the entire budget. In terms of the next slide, which is slide number 19, we're indicating the split of the reductions. Out of compensation of employees, the reduction is 31 million. And out of goods and services, the cut is 49 million. And the transfers and subsidies, as I indicated earlier on, Honorable Chair, it's 6 million for CPSI. What I want to indicate, which is basically the details in the next slide, is that despite the fact that we have a cut of 31 million under compensation of employees, this cut will not affect our aim of filling all the vacant posts that we have currently advertised, and other critical vacant posts. We will still be able to manage to do that, because the cuts basically were affected on the savings on compensation of employees. In terms of the goods and services cuts, which is 49 million that I've indicated in the previous slide, we actually targeted the obvious budget line items as indicated in that slide. 70% cut on domestic travel and 70% on foreign travel, which is 21 million. And we also targeted catering. We have cut the 100% catering in the department. Venues and facilities, we have cut 100% in the department. And we have cut training and development 60%, as well as on stationery 70%. These basically are the line items that, obviously, because of the pandemic, there's not going to be much traveling, particularly this financial year. Hopefully that this pandemic does not extend to the next financial year. Catering, of course, this is part of what we do as we host some of the departments in terms of our work and monitoring and evaluation, and also traveling. So we have cut on those, and we will try and find a way to actually still achieve what we wanted to achieve. And we'll try and be innovative in trying to achieve those without traveling a lot and hosting officials. The next slide also is still continuation of the details that we indicating where we have cut, which forms part of the 49 million. Under supply chain office accommodation, there was a real saving of 6 million, which was over budgeted, which we have cut for this financial year. And we've also cut under GEHS, which is Government Employee Housing Scheme, 3 million. This is money that is actually ring-fenced under GEHS. So basically, Honorable Chair, I would not go through the entire slides, but if there are any other questions, we would gladly like to deal with those questions. But the next slide, until slide number 23, we're just explaining where we have actually taken the cuts. But like we have indicated earlier on, we have not dropped any basically of the targets for this financial year in our APP. We have just readjusted the timeline and how we're going to do it. So there's really no much impact in terms of what the budget's done this financial year. The cuts, we had to comply with the special adjustment budget. This, Honorable Chair, brings me to the end of my financial presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. Can we then receive the presentation from the Center for Public Service and Innovation?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members, Minister and Deputy Minister. I will share the presentation. Kindly alert me if you, I think it's coming up. Honorable Chair and honorable members, I think based on the input by the Minister, the CPSI as well has not changed its strategic plan and annual performance plan at all. We are actually keeping the targets as they are. It looks like my computer is a bit slow, so I'll switch off the camera. I will skip the slide. It's just information about what we've put in place internally within the organization to fight COVID. These are our targets for 2020-21. We are maintaining all the targets, not changing them at all. So we are retaining them as they are. What we would like to raise to the committee is that we may have challenges, but we are confident that we'll be able to deal with those challenges. One of the challenges that we face is face-to-face engagements, either with service delivery officials, when we have to go on site to assess challenges or engage with...
my apology, can you just manage the screen because the presentation is not showing?
Is it not showing?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know what happened because it's showing from my side. I will ask Pierre, please try to share from your side. I'm not sure, maybe it's my connection. Let me stop sharing. So apologies about that. Somebody just said it's showing. I don't know what's, okay, let me try again.
Try again, yes.
I think my network is a bit slow. Can we all see it,
yes,
honorable members, colleagues and Minister, Deputy Minister? Okay, I'll move to the slide that I was trying to talk to. Slide number 5. That although we are maintaining all the targets as they are, we have a challenge that some of our engagements need us to go to the site. Also needs us to engage with developers within the National System of Innovation as part of our projects in terms of innovative solutions that we're working with. It also affects site visits. We also have a Public Sector Innovation Awards program, but with the COVID, then it will not be possible. But we're able to mitigate against some of these things. For instance, with our innovation workshops, the community of practice that we do through the conference, community of practice for innovators. We are exploring in terms of holding them virtually, holding webinars, but it might be a challenge in certain areas. For instance, in this financial year, we wanted to expose public servants to design thinking skills. And when you workshop people on design thinking, it's a very labor-intensive process. You need to work together. You need to use paper, flip chart, and so forth, because it's a very interactive way of solving problems. But we are hopeful that we'll be able to source service providers that will be able to engage public servants while we render these workshops. We, as indicated by the CFO of the department, we were able to, we actually, our budget was adjusted by 6 million. So we contributed to the response package as announced by the president. The proposed saving from CPSI constitutes 32% of the government goods and services budget. On the next slide, it just shows you where the cuts are. We actually sacrificed from goods and services. The areas that we cut from is travel and subsistence, quite substantial. at 2.3 million for the same reasons articulated by the department, that there's less traveling to provinces to engage with other partners outside the country. We also have a huge saving in terms of our lease payment, a saving of about 4 million. That saving was caused by us moving from our own building and moving into DPSA to share the building. So we're able to give that back to Treasury to cover for the COVID-related costs. We had just under $1 million saving on venues and facilities, as we are now moving on to virtual presentation of these programs. Just over 600,000 saving on contractors and marketing. Now we are using more social media in terms of marketing and other to promote what we do or engage with some of our clients. Just to emphasize that the achievement of targets that require on-site work, somehow they will be affected. I just want to emphasize the work that we do within the Public Sector Innovation Awards program, which fits into our replication program, will also be affected, but we will find ways of carrying out this work. We've changed the mode of presentation for innovation knowledge platforms, so we don't foresee that we will have a huge problem with regard to that. And as indicated by the minister, we do not foresee that we will change the strategic plan targets as reflected in the strategic plan. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you for the presentation. My appreciation for taking us through the areas that the Center for Public Service and Innovation identified as an opportunity for contribution to COVID-19. We will now invite the National School of Government. Over to you. Just introduce your team, Chairperson, and then give over to the right person to present. Over to you, Chair. Are we National School of Government?
Hello.
Yes.
Evening.
Just introduce yourself and the team.
Okay. No. Good evening, Chair, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. Busani Ngaweni here, the principal. I'm with my CFO. I will only do 3 slides, Chair, and request the CFO to do 5 slides. The rest of the slides are just there for information purposes. May I check, Chair, whether the presentation is showing? I'm showing slide number 7. I wish to know whether it is showing before I proceed.
Indeed, Principal, it is showing.
Okay. No, thank you, Chair. As I said, I'll only do 3 slides, and the CFO will do 5 slides, starting with slide number 7. I think, Chair, it's fair to say in the portfolio of the MPSA of the minister, as we are coming here as a portfolio, the National School of Government is the hardest hit by COVID-19. That is because the National School of Government operates on a cost recovery basis. 80% of the revenue of the department, as vote number 8 is self-generated. We charge fees for public servants who are attending courses at the NSG. 20% comes from National Treasury to cover our basic costs such as rental and other areas of compliance like CFO, supply chain, and so on. The regulated functions in the department. So we are the hardest hit, as we indicated in the past. We have lost revenue In fact, since the second week of March, when flights started to be cancelled in the first week of March, we saw the numbers dwindling immediately. And during the months of April, May, and June, we had zero revenue because the bulk of our programs are delivered on a face-to-face basis. We will show later, Chair, that we need to move our programs to online platforms, but we need to make this disclaimer that migrating the majority of the NSG programs into online will have a severe impact on the most junior of workers in the public sector, especially those who do not have access to laptops and data cards because of their levels in the workplace where they work. And many of the workers in the front line who are our very supportive clients are heavily impacted by this because they can only access computers and they can only access data when they are at the office during working hours. And we need to make this disclaimer. Also, we must make a disclaimer that moving to online has a major impact on our budget because we need to invest in buying technology. Most of the online learning platforms like the one we are using for this committee, for which Parliament has spent money to have a license for, like Zoom and others, will require that we do an investment. And according to the revised budget, 16 million rands of the NSG budget has been cut. This then means that the money we were hoping to use to invest in basic technology like the one we are using now, Zoom and others, that money is no longer available. Also, as we are now back to training after the revision of the regulations, we are taking much more smaller classes because of social distancing considerations. This obviously has an impact on revenue. It is good quality learning if we have 10 people in a class. However, our numbers of chasing 43,000 people per year are significantly being undermined by the fact that we need smaller classes. We must say though, Chair, that as a department on PPE, we're spending less resources. We don't need as much on our own PPE, save for preparing venues, whether at the school or outside in the venues we hire, where we need to invest in PPE. However, the biggest issue for us is investing in infrastructure. For example, today, we started a training program in partnership with a university in China, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. It's an online training program, or it's live virtual for 3 hours every day from 9 to 12, where we have mayors, deputy ministers, and senior public servants. That needs an investment for us from a data line and other type of technologies. And it will not, at this rate, because you can't train more than 30 people like that, it will not be able to help us achieve the target of 43,000 people that we are chasing. And lastly, Chair, in this background, this is how we're aiming to respond, and our adjusted budget still makes this a priority. We need to increase our bandwidth. We have written to National Treasury as well as CETA. We need a much more bigger and faster data line for us to do the webinars and live training programs. We need to spend more resources doing marketing for our blended training, and we already started to do that. The interest is changing. One of our online courses during lockdown recorded 2,000 students. For the whole of last year, there were less than 200 people who enrolled, less than 200. And during the 4 months of the lockdown, there were 2,000 people who enrolled, and we're hoping to achieve a lot more of those. And finally, there is a ministerial directive that we are finalizing on compulsory programs, Once this is finalized, Chair and honorable members, it will have a major impact on the budget of the NSG, because there will be more online compulsory programs that public servants must enroll for. It will then increase our revenue in a more significant way. That is in addition to us partnering with higher education institutions who are helping us to reach scale. And the program we are delivering with them are accredited programs. After graduating, people can either pursue an honors or a master's program. We will, short of an advert, we will in the coming weeks conclude an MOU with Parliament, which will enable NSG to offer 2 higher certificates and a diploma to the honorable members of Parliament, with universities, higher education institutions. This has been done successfully in the past. We coordinate and lead that program, and the Secretary of Parliament is the one who makes resources available. So we will be inviting some of the members of this committee to join this diploma and postgraduate certificate programs. If you allow me, Chair, I will request the CFO to move to slide number 11, and she's got 3 slides that are showing how the budget has changed. Thank you, Chair. CFO Phindile Mkhwanazi.
Thank you. Green light is given. CFO.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good evening, Chairperson and the members. Yes. On the slide that is on the screen right now, it shows us one of the scenarios the principal was talking about, where we are reducing the class size. What's the implication as in the revenue? It shows that we will lose more revenue because of the reduction in the class sizes. If we move then to the next slide, Principal, still controlling.
You are controlling now, Phindi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then doing things. Apologies for that. Okay, on slide 15, this is now on the budget. We had a budget allocation of 206.6 million. With the budget reduction, it's been reduced with 16 million. So the 16 million affects us on the goods and services only, doesn't affect the cost of the employee costs. So we've reduced our travel costs, our leases, partly our leases will be affected, as well as our IT-related services, which we're earmarking to help us upscale towards teaching more online courses. The reduction mainly, we've also had to reduce our targets, our training targets by about 40%. So we'll only be able, we're planning to train only 60% of the original target. And on the revenue, especially on the trading account, it has been reduced by 43%, which I will show in the next slide. Okay. The next slide is showing the trading account financials. On the first column, then says 2020-21, we're showing that we'll be able to raise about 132 million from our training courses. We've now revised that to 75 million. This is due to the fact that the training numbers have come down, and the biggest issue is that our revenue is driven by the number of people you train and the tariffs that are approved by National Treasury for us to be able to recover. So at the end of the financial year, we foresee that we'll have a deficit in our budget of about 25 million, which we've highlighted to National Treasury, and we're busy engaging with them to try and focus on that plan. So as I said, the main targets that will change then, the revenue will remain reduced from 132 million to 75 million. Then the number of people that we're going to train, as I said, is going to be 60% of the original target. So the ones on compulsory programs, we had a target of 7,900. We'll now train 5,265. And then on the induction programs, we had a target of 15,000. We will now train 8,535. On the other programs which are demand-driven, we had a target of 20,700. We'll now reduce it to 12,240. The next slide then is just to summarize the impact of these changes. We are projecting a 25 million deficit. This is mainly due to the months, as the principal has said, we haven't had any training for the 4 months that we even this month, we don't see any training that will happen. So there hasn't been any training. After we've reduced the targets and all, we see a deficit of 25 million. When we had the lockdown, we proactively started speaking to National Treasury. We wrote them letters, we had meetings with them. And when the budget cuts came about, we also had discussions with them to indicate to them the implication of the NSG budget. But they still implemented the budget cuts. They are considering looking at the MTBPS process, where they can be able to bail us out, because we see that we'll have to get a bailout within around October or so if nothing changes, if we're still not able to train. We've also had a meeting with our Accountant General in the office of in the National Treasury, where we are looking as well at the prepayments to see if they cannot find mechanisms to allow us to use those funds in order to cover the deficit that we will have. So these are ongoing discussions with National Treasury as we try and formulate solution for the funding of the trading account, which is where we do our core business in the School of Training. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO, for running through the remaining slide of the presentation from the National School of Government. Honorable members, we will now invite the Public Service Commission. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We've got the Chairperson of the Public Service Commission here, CFO, DDG, or DDGs, and the Chief Operating Officer. Our presentation will be short, and we would like to draw the attention of the honorable members to slide 6. This slide 6 is important for us because it helps the honorable members to know the budget of the Public Service Commission. As the Minister has already indicated, we are not touching the strategy or the MTSF of the Public Service Commission. The only changes will be only with regard to the APP. However, then the budget is only with regard to the APP. As honorable members can see on this slide, particularly on bullet 1, 2, 3, number 4, the Treasury took 10 million from the budget of the Public Service Commission. This 10 million was with regard to goods and services. And as a result of COVID-19, the Public Service Commission has already projected to spend 3.6 million on the COVID-19 related expenses. These expenses are in line with to disinfect the offices, getting the PPE for the officials, and so on and so forth. And this 3.6 means we are still counting because we are not even sure as to by when will this end. This means that at any given point, if on any day we had an official who is infected, we close the office and disinfect. This can happen on weekly basis anytime. So therefore, the 3.6 that were projected can still go up. What is important, honorable members, is also to indicate that in terms of the money that then they will be taken from the PSC, or that will be lost as a result of COVID-19, is the 10 million that the Treasury has taken, plus the 3.6, and we're still counting. So it's important to bring that to the attention of honorable members to see how COVID will have affected the budget of the Public Service Commission. I will therefore move to slide 18. This slide 18 is important because that's where we are saying to honorable members, compared to the APP that the honorable members approved at the beginning of the financial year in 2021, this is where we are introducing the changes that we have revised as a result of COVID-19. The only areas that the Commission has revised its targets on are those areas that have, or those targets that have direct interaction with the members of public. That's where we had planned to conduct workshops on professional ethics, on constitutional values and principles, and other areas. So those have been revised and removed from the APP. They were consciously removed because the COVID-19 doesn't want any form of interaction under one roof, and therefore we felt that we could not do. We have also changed the targets that have to do with the finalization of the grievances and complaints. With regard to grievances, we have revised them from 80% to 60%. And with regard to complaints, as honorable members can see, we have revised them from 75% to 50%. And similarly, with regard to constitutional values and principles reports, we have revised them from 50 to 25. We have the view that we will still be able to ensure that the mandate of the Commission are realized, or is realized during this COVID-19, and the oversight will also be deepened with the areas that we have remained with in terms of the APP. It is also important just to indicate that in the process of revising this APP, the Commission was conscious of the fact that there are certain areas that will require visual interaction with the stakeholders. For an example, in one area where we said we had planned 10 interactions on the promotion of constitutional values and principles, that one has been removed and therefore was replaced by articles that the Commission will develop. The articles will also be central in the promotion of ethics and conduct in the public service. Finally, honorable members, because the other areas are very clear that we're not going to change, we didn't change anything compared to the one that the committee approved in the beginning of the financial year. It's just to indicate that we have changed the focus. Initially, the focus of the Commission was with the health facilities where we were conducting inspections. The Commission has therefore changed to the education sector. The education sector has been chosen mainly because it now begins to say, how can Commission ensure that the Department of Education or departments of education, with the return of learners to schools, they ensure social distancing, they ensure availability of the PPEs at schools, and they also ensure that classrooms are reduced to the acceptable number that will strengthen that particular social distancing. Those are the areas that the Commission has revised its target in line or as a result of COVID-19. And with that, I think I would like to conclude the presentation of the Public Service Commission. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair, for the presentation. And indeed, the team was able to ensure that indeed the thrust of areas that are affected are brought to the fore to the discussion. What we are going to do now, we are going to invite honorable members to to engage with the presentation. I have a list of all honorable members to ensure that there is smooth running of this interaction and deliberations. I will identify all of them so that if one of them is satisfied with the presentation, then it's fine. We'll then move to the next person. Let me start first with Honorable Soma. Honorable Soma.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, colleagues and the minister and the team. Thank you very much. Probably let me start by appreciating the presentation, which was direct to the point. Having said that, Chair, I'm sure the minister will assist on this one or confirm with me my perception. Our fiscal is a little bit stressed, or we are going to witness a lower revenue collection in terms of tax collection, which might not change the immediate future in terms of budget, government budget. So in relation of those objectives or predetermined objectives that have been frozen or deferred, how would they be funded in the next financial budget? Or you'll adjust them again moving forward as a moving target or what? Because I don't foresee Treasury also having more money for 2022-23 financial budget also to accommodate the ones that were sacrificed for allowing the budget cuts. Two, Chair, is that probably my point is a suggestion than a question, that probably public DPSA must lead the paperless public services, it were, in terms of those functions that are office-based in terms of their execution. Thirdly, Chair, can the department, through the minister, I thought the DG was going to confirm this, to take this committee in confidence that we are still going to be enjoying a clean audit report in the end of the financial year. I think those are the only, or the very last one is to say, probably in your opening remarks, Chair, you made that one, but just to re-emphasize that all the budget cuts that have been done, they doesn't necessarily compromise the core business of different entities and the departments, as it were. Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Suma. Honorable Khai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good evening, and also good evening to the Minister and the Deputy Minister, DG, and the leadership of the entities. Thank you for the opportunity. Maybe I should also follow up on the issue that Honorable Lisoma is raising. I think the NA has just come out of the plenary session on fiscal framework. As NSOP, we adopted it in the morning. But when the minister was closing the debate, he was emphasizing something that he also raised when he was tabling the supplementary budget. My question is also directed to the minister, particularly with regard to the MTEF. Because the Minister of Finance continued to talk about a zero-based budget. What does that then mean with regard to the strategic plan? I hear that the minister was saying, and also the DG was saying, as well as the entities, that the focus in terms of the changes will be on the annual performance plans, not on the strategic plan. Now, in line with what Honorable Lisoma was saying, which I fully agree with, but then we need a clarification from the minister as to what then will be, taking into account the issue that Honorable Lisoma is raising, that the fiscal space, in addition to that, the fact that the minister is going to introduce the zero-based budget. What will be the impact of that on the MTF? Chair, I also appreciate, I think for us from the NCOP, we have already engaged with the departments, with the other departments because of the nature of the committees of the NCOP. We'll be continuing to do that tomorrow and also on Friday. But we appreciate, and also we've been expecting this because as it was indicated even the last period where we've been engaging with the APPs and strategic plans of departments, we're aware that we'll be reaching this stage where departments will have, and entities will have to revise their budgets. So we appreciate that the ministry and the administration have been involved with the Treasury negotiating. We understand that there were hard negotiations to reach the level where the budget is at now. But what appreciating that as well, but I just wanted the DG, because this came from your presentation, you clarify the issue of the organizational functionality assessment, but also in particular the personnel expenditure review that has replaced the wage setting mechanism. You clarify why the money then was taken, but you didn't clarify because we need to see the link between the change in the annual performance plan and the reduction of the budget for that particular item. So this is where I got confused as to what has the issue, for example, of the job competency framework for the public service, which has been replaced by what you call the occupation directory. One, I would like if you can expand what do you mean by this occupancy directly in relation to the competency framework, what the competency framework was going to be all about, and what is now this new occupancy directory all about, but also what is the relationship between these items and the reductions in terms of the budget. So my question, Chair, would be only around the department. Otherwise, I'm fine with the entities. Thank you very much.
Is Honorable Schreider?
Thank you, Chair. Let me just switch on my video as well. Thanks, Chair, and good evening, colleagues and honorable members. Chair, I have a couple of quick questions. I'll try to keep it short because I know that it is late. First of all, Chair, the reference to the technical unit that was made, there was a reference that the budget for this establishment of the technical unit will not be impacted. I want to check if that is correct. I want to confirm that and also find out what is the current status of the establishment of that unit and whether the budget allocation as it stands will be sufficient to actually finalize that process soon. So what is the current status on that unit's establishment? Chair, also staying with the point that was raised on the DPSA presentation about the personnel expenditure review, replacing the wage bill, the development of the wage bill setting mechanism. Can we get a bit more detail on that? And then also, I know the minister gets annoyed with me probably when I ask this, but we do only see each other once every month or every 2 months. So I'd also like to ask for a brief update on where we are with the wage bill renegotiations, given that this is a expenditure item that obviously cuts across the entire apparatus of government. So any update on where the wage bill renegotiations or the court cases, etc., currently are? Chair, a third and final question directed at the Public Service Commission. I was a little bit concerned about the downward adjustment on the targets regarding investigations. The reason I say that is because I think a lot of us have seen the escalation in corruption and other issues that is going along with the COVID funding that has been made available. So what assurance can the Public Service Commission give us that if you are revising your target down regarding investigations, that you'll actually be able to cope with the potential demand that will come from all these cases that we've already seen about in the media and other places regarding mismanagement of COVID-19 funds and other aspects of the response. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sharara. Honorable Khalipi. Do we have Honorable Khalipi with us? Honorable Apleni.
No, I'm covered, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Apleni.
I'm covered, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Tebekulu. Is Honorable Tebekulu with us? Honorable Sibisi. Honorable Tim Practice.
Excuse me, Chair. Chair, I just have two questions really. The one question cuts right across all the department and the entities presenting to us this evening, and that relates to COVID-19 reporting, COVID-19 expenditure reporting to Treasury in terms of Treasury Note 8. I would just like to get an update from the department and the entities with us this evening that they have in fact been reporting all their COVID-19 expenditure, that's COVID-19 related expenditure in terms of that instruction note, and whether we will be able to get a copy of the report that has been sent to Treasury for April, May, and the report that should have been completed for June. I think it's very important that both our committees keep a very close eye on COVID-related expenditure because it is free of any procurement restrictions. The next question I have is, on the 20th of May, we engaged with the Public Service and Administration Department, and I asked the Minister about the technical unit that Honourable Schreiber has raised again. And the Minister assured us that the unit was functioning, but maybe not in name. He assured us that there were a list of people in his department that were actually running the unit and were actively involved in matters that they were dealing with. And Chair, the minutes will reflect, and certainly the recording of that meeting will reflect, that I asked for a list of those people and I asked for a list of the matters that they were dealing with. But unfortunately, Chair, as we sit here now on the 8th of July, I've still not received any list from the department as to who is working in that unit and what matters they are dealing with. And I think that the Minister owes us an answer on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Protestant. Makibi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, good evening to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the Honorable members. Allow me also to welcome the presentations by the different departments. Really, one can see the job that they are doing. But with the NSG, I just want to know the target for generating revenue has been revised from 132 million to 75 million. Is this based on 20 learners per class, or is there another formula that has been used to calculate targets and expected budget? On the CPSI, will value for money be realized where there will be no site visits to replication projects? Those are my two questions.
Thank you, Honorable Kiwi. Honorable Landsman.
No, myself, I'm covered, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Landsman. Honorable Kachalia, is he with us? Honorable Clark. Can we then move to Honorable Tuli?
Sorry, Chair, it's Honorable Clark.
Okay,
sorry, I've got a very bad signal as well this evening, so I'm really battling to hear you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have been covered by Honourable Schreiber in terms of the investigations and the concerns around that. But one thing I would like to request, and if we could make that a recommendation this evening at this meeting, that at every committee meeting we have, there's a report served to us on the expenditure of COVID-19. Thank you for all our departments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Clark. Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Maneli.
Ntuli is here, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson, but my hand was not up. One would love to welcome all the presentation. Chairperson, safe to say, I've been covered by the previous speakers, particularly Honorable Lesoma, who was sort of chatting the way for most of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Maluleke.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm covered by honorable members who came before me. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation by the presenters. Thank you.
My pleasure. Honorable Mulomani. Honorable Mulomani. Honorable Dango. Honorable Dango.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, just an emphasis. We are moving away from accrual accounting into zero-based budgeting. What are the implications for the ministry and for the entities with zero-based budgeting? Just to re-emphasize what the Honorable Hayat said earlier, I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dango. Honorable Matebula. Honorable Matebula. Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening to the Minister and everybody else. I've been covered by all the questions that have been posed to the platform, but I would like to throw a stone in the woods. We've heard about all the budget cuts that are going to take place because of the COVID-19 pandemic. What I would like to know is that if the department and all the other entities should see or should realize that they are able to carry on after the pandemic, would they be prepared to look into it as cost-saving measures for a long-term strategy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. Let me just get guidance from the two committee secretaries. Have I covered all the members? Just want to check as well. Is there any member that I did not identify to engage with the presentations?
Yes, Chair, it's Mr. Zbego Mastole here.
Okay, Honorable Zbego, you can continue.
No, Secretary, Chair, Secretary, Chair.
Oh, Secretary, okay.
Yes, you've covered all of my members, Chair, from Public Service and Administration. However, there's one Honorable Tebekulu has sent a WhatsApp a question to the department and the entities, Chair. Allow me to actually read that particular question, Chair.
Agreed.
I'll read it as it is, Chair. My question is with regards to government departments not recruiting because of budget cuts. Is this not going to affect service delivery? That's the question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Secretary. Minister, the floor is yours and the entities.
Thank you very much, Chair, and the colleagues in the National Assembly. I'll answer some of the questions. Obviously, some will be covered by others. Number one is in relation to the fiscus decline. How will next year be funded? I'll answer that together with the other question on zero budget.
Or maybe, Minister, what you can do, why don't you give the entities and the DG and then you wrap up?
Okay. Well, yes. That's fine.
Yeah, let's start with the DG.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll ask the CFO also to be on standby on the finance-specific questions to answer. The first one being on the clean audit, the CFO can share what his reflections are on that issue. In terms of the budget cuts, I think the minister said he was going to answer that question. There's a question around the organizational functional assessments and the expenditure, the personnel expenditure. So the organizational functional assessments is really work that the department is doing around how we support departments to improve productivity in the public sector. So what we are saying is that we are not fully ready to roll out the tool because the departments are not ready. They've raised a number of capacity issues that we are working with them on. So we will continue to pilot with a smaller number of departments instead of fully rolling out the tool. But it's really aimed at how do we support departments to improve efficiencies and to improve a number of things that are happening in terms of their productivity. That's broadly it. The second issue around wage setting mechanisms. So I think the easiest way to explain this is just to say it is a process. Wage setting mechanism is a process which will involve a number of stages. The first stage is to do research on personnel expenditure. So a personnel expenditure review. So if you look at the public service, we need a personnel expenditure review for the public service, which is your national and provincial governments. COGTA may want to do the same in relation to local government, and the DPE has already issued, I think, a tender in relation to personnel expenditure for the state-owned enterprises as part of the work that is being done by the SOC Council that has been set up by the President. So what we are saying in our APP is that this first component of the personnel expenditure of the wage setting mechanism, we are committing that it has to be delivered. There are financial implications because this is research. So there's lots of money you need to put on research. However, we are in communication with Treasury on how best do we do this, taking into account some of the deductions that we've had, but there is a commitment that it's going to happen. The next stage, once you are done with that, is to develop a common framework which is at the core of your wage setting mechanism. That common framework will look at wages in respect to the public service, which is national and provincial government, local government, as well as the state-owned enterprises, so that you have a one view of the public administration in terms of the wages. a common framework in relation to that. So you want, at the end, you want to standardize salaries, you want to standardize processes, but you still want to respect the bargaining council processes and the labor relations processes that have been put in place in relation to this space. So, and then this ultimately should result in a draft bill that must go through the parliamentary processes that standardizes wage setting mechanisms across the public service. I think that broadly, Chair, this is how the project looks like. So what we are committing is that the first part of the project in relation to us in the public service, which is the personnel expenditure review, it has to be done in the current financial year. Then there was a third issue I was asked about, the job competency framework. This is part of the defining the job competencies in the public service in the longer term is part of how it's linked to how you remunerate people and how you manage your wage. But as part of the step, what we're saying is there's a step that relates to us. We need to define occupations in the public service, which is what we are calling by a occupational dictionary. We need to, before you get to a job competency, you need to define occupations in the public service. And that's what we're saying we're currently busy with at this particular stage. And we're going to complete it in the current financial year. And then if I may move, Chair, I actually, the information the honorable member was talking about in relation to the technical advisory unit, the numbers of the people who are working in the unit and what they are doing. I think there is I saw a report from my part. I signed a report that is being sent to the minister in relation to that, and then it will certainly be sent to the committee. So we have not ignored that issue. It's still in the pipeline, it's coming. The update on the wage bill, I think the minister is going to do that one. The COVID-19 related expenditure, I think the CFO can speak on that, but I do want to indicate, honorable members, that for us as the department, we go through procurement on COVID related matters like we would with any procurement in the department. So we do the 3-code system, we do the entire process that needs to be done. Like for instance, now the building of the department is closed because there were some positive cases that we've picked up. We've had to issue a tender, a call for quotations, and that process is unfolding. So we are not free of the procurement processes in the department, but the CFO can speak in detail on the issue, that information that is required. I think I spoke about the technical unit. Key to the functions that the technical unit is doing is really around managing discipline in the public service and governance issues related to discipline in the public service, amongst other issues. Then there is, I think CFO can speak on the issue of zero-based budgeting. All I can say is we have not received any confirmation from Treasury on this and what type of approach and guidance that we need to follow. They have not done that yet. However, I'm sure there is work that is unfolding with the CFOs, even if it's not officially communicated to us yet as DGs. Then there was a question about if we are able to carry on with the cost-saving measures, would we continue? The fact of the matter is, for a department like DPSA, taking away 80 million is a lot of money. So we've had to cut a lot of positions, and that talks to the capacity of the institution to be able to do so much of the work that we're expected to do. So we are overstretching our capacity currently, and I'm not sure how far could we be able to overstretch that capacity, but we are functional, we have our responsibilities, and we're delivering on them. The last one, a question, I think it related to...
Apology. Can we just request the screen to be removed?
Yes. I'm not sure, Chair, who's working on the screen.
Can the host take down the screen? Thank you. Yeah. Because now we are now getting access to the information that we don't need at this level. Thank you.
The last question was government departments not recruiting due to budget cuts. Well, it is a concern. because, well, departments have had to cut somewhere. And as I'm saying, for us as DPSA, we lost about 80 million, and a lot of that money related to some of our vacant positions that needed to be filled. How this affects each department is differently. And I think departments can speak for themselves, but certainly it would affect, a budget cut of that nature would affect personnel. And for a department like DPSA, we rely heavily on human resources, on our personnel as a department, because we are in the knowledge economy. People have to think, have to put position papers, have to do research, and etc. So there is a pinch that we are feeling. However, we understand the situation that the country is in, and we, with the little resources that we have, we really have to push and do more with them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG CFO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll just quickly go through the questions that were asked relating to finances. The first one from Honorable Lisoma, the issue around clean audit. It is our target and remains our target to obtain the clean audit. So we will be submitting financial statements at the end of this month, and the AG would audit those financial statements. So it is our target, the clean audit. There was a question around the zero-based budgeting and what impact we need to have in terms of the strategic planning and going forward. Obviously, the zero-based budgeting, as DG has indicated, we have not received the guidelines from National Treasury. The Minister of Finance indeed has pronounced on the zero-based budgeting. And once we receive the guidelines from Treasury, we were supposed to receive them anytime from now. We will then have to engage in the process. Zero-based budgeting, it simply means that the departments are not going to rely on their baseline that they have. If, like for example, if DPSA's baseline budget is 575 million, when you go on a zero-based budgeting, you start on zero, you budget from zero. Then it means you need to cost all your posts that you need in the department, the people that you have, and the posts that you may need to fill, and those that you may need to add. Again, in terms of the projects, you will have to concentrate on specifically the projects that are the mandate of the department. So you actually clean up all the issues like projects that are actually not a government priority. So that is zero-based budgeting. So you are not going to say, okay, I've got 575 million, and then I can budget and say, where am I going to place this project and this project? You start from zero, and that's the process that will be properly managed and closely monitored by National Treasury. So that's basically the impact, and that may have also an impact in terms of our strategic planning going forward. The MTF allocations will also have to be revised based on the zero-based budgeting. So that's how it is, and it will have an impact on that. And I think maybe linked to that question is the question that was asked around whether the department would consider cost-saving measures if we are able to we're able to survive this financial year with these cuts. Obviously, the zero-based budgeting will actually address that, because then you start from zero. The other question that I want to deal with, there was a question from an honorable member around the budget allocation for TAU, whether that budget has not been tampered with. Yes, indeed, in terms of the cuts, we specifically indicated that that budget will not be touched, so we did not adjust that budget. We did not cut it because of the importance of this task. So that budget is still there in the line items for TAU. There was a question from Honorable Team, COVID-19 related expenditure, whether the report was sent to National Treasury in terms of the practice note. Honorable Team, the practice note that you're referring to on 3.4, it relates to all items that were procured as emergency procurement. So in terms of DPSA, as the DG has indicated, there were no COVID-19 related items that were procured on emergency based. We actually followed the normal process, luckily, because that we only procure for the PPEs for the department, and we don't have provincial or regional offices. So there were no emergency procurements, and that practice not relates basically on the procurement that was done in terms of emergency, or where you did not use the list that the National Treasury has indicated. So we do not have a report to submit to National Treasury. We did not submit any because we did not procure anything on emergency. All our procurement, COVID-19 related procurement were done following the normal processes. But we do have a report that we can share of all the expenditure for COVID-19, whether it's the ones that we indicating that were normal processes. Accrual accounting versus the zero-based budgeting, what are the implications from Honorable Dame? I think I've dealt with that question in terms of zero-based budgeting, how it's going to be applied. Honorable Chair, I think that concludes my set of questions that I've tried to answer to the honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. For the Center for Public Service and Innovation, there was none.
There were, Honorable Chair. Yes, I'm going to quickly respond to two, and the CFO will respond to all the finance-related ones. One was about the value for money, where we are able to go on site. I think that will remain a challenge. Although we've initiated some of the projects that we have on our APP, we will sort of assess as we go on whether we'll be able to access site visits. I mean, if health workers are still in hospitals and clinics, we will have to find a way of engaging with our partners to make sure that the projects move forward. The next one, it was around whether we will adopt cost-saving measures. I think as the center, we are actually a bit excited as well that we will be exploring new ways of doing things. And if it works for us, I think we will continue to use those, the new normal ways of, the new normal, rather than go back to how we used to do things. So if it works for us, we will then definitely adopt it. I will ask Ms. Annette Sneema, the CFO, to answer all the finance-related questions. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. CFO.
Good evening, it's Annette Sneema speaking. I think the questions based on the zero-based...
Can you put your video on? You see, that's the challenge because this is requested. Can I just make a humble appeal to members to switch their video on when they respond? Thank you. We can continue.
Okay, thank you. The questions on the zero-based budgeting and the accruals, I think the CFO from DPSA already addressed that because it will be the same for all of the departments. On the emergency procurement related to the COVID, we didn't do any emergency procurement. All our procurement was done through the normal procurement processes. Yes, we are keeping record of all the expenditure incurred. I think that is all the questions that was raised us on the finances. Thank you.
My pleasure. National School of Government.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the two questions and request the CFO to add. Firstly, Chair, we remain committed to the target of a clean audit. There's a commitment of the leadership of the school. In fact, all the executive managers are here in this meeting listening. The matters raised by the auditors in the past related to, which we run two accounts basically. There's a vote account where 20% of the money from the treasury goes into, as well as the training trade account, which is basically a business. So we run a business. We sell products, which is training. And that's how the school survive. At least 80% of the income comes from there. So there are departments who will do what is called the pre-bookings. So a department, it could actually even be a member of parliament who might have participated in our program before. If you book a space, but you don't show up. if you didn't show up and you canceled, we can recognize that money as revenue, so it moves into our vote account. However, if there was a postponement over time, that money remains in the trade, it's a liability, we can't recognize as income. So in the past, the auditors have raised the fact that we must do an age analysis so that we must recognize some of the money as income, especially the monies where people have not attended training over a number of years. We are currently in a very intricate process with National Treasury, and in particular with the Accountant General, where we need to identify specifically the money that is in the trade account, which has not been used, and people never showed up for training programs over the past 3 to 4 years, and we wish to move that money into our vote account. This is important because it will address the issue of that the auditors had raised in the past, but also this is how, honorable members, we have sought to deal with our current deficit because of zero revenue over the months of the lockdown. So instead of asking National Treasury to bail us out in the budget that was read just now, we are working with them to recognize some of this money so that the departments who've not used the money, it can be transferred and become part of our recognized income. This is key, Chair, because just as we are using this platform here, there are many departments who do not have licenses for platforms like this one. This means even as we move to online training in this kind of a platform, public servants who don't have personal subscription to Microsoft Teams will not be able to access our programs. This will then limit access only to those who have it, or at least those who are at senior management level. The cuts are a challenge for the school because if you cut training budgets of departments, there will be fewer public servants who will come and attend the training programs of the NSG, which will impact our revenue. Therefore, the question from the honorable member about future projections, it's very important because our business model as it stands is that we work on a self-funding basis. So if the department decides to cancel all training programs, we should declare to this committee that the NSG will not be able to meet its obligations if departments cancel or withdraw the training budgets completely. The NSG, in fact, as a department, will then require a bailout, which is something we've seen in SOEs, which is very unfortunate. We have no intention of getting into that space. That is why we are engaging National Treasury. For example, the cuts in technology budget and the data means fewer public servants will have access to some of our online programs, and that's a matter of concern for us. I must state in closing, Chair, that we are engaging the Department of Telecommunications and Digital Technologies. We have spoken to their administrative leadership to help us engage the telcos with the idea. Okay, I'm coming. Okay. Okay, so we are engaging with them with the idea of getting some of our compulsory online programs to be zero rated, because that will do very well for junior public servants in terms of them accessing the online programs of the NSG. CFO, can you please answer the budget questions?
Thank you, Principal. CFO?
Okay, yes, thank you. On the issues of the budget, the question was around, let me start with the COVID budget. We have spent about 306,000 on the COVID, the preparation of making sure we have the PPE in the building for the staff. Part of that we had, which was an emergency procurement, was only for 78,000 rands, where we had to clean the department after one of our employees had tested positive. That was the only emergency procurement that we had. The other question was around the reduction of our revenue target from 132 million to 75, whether it was based on a class size of 20. No, it's based on a class size of 15, because with the issue of COVID, we have to make sure there's the social distancing when we roll out training. As the colleagues from DPSA have answered the question around the zero budgeting, and it's for the voter count, the zero budgeting will be the same story as has been answered, but on the trading account, accounting wise, it has to use the accrual accounting, and I don't foresee that they will change that. We will still have to continue to use accrual accounting for the trading account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CFO. Can we then go to Public Service Commission?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The two questions that were raised, the Public Service Commission or what the PSA would like to respond to, we are committed to audit and such the audit tracking schedule that we apply, which helps us to identify or to deal with the 8 areas that we identified at age in the previous financial year. We focus on them regularly so that we can be able to address them, because once we have addressed them, when the AG comes in the following year, then we would have appreciated the work done in their previous identification. So we have done that. I think, Honorable Schreiber, the point that we needed to indicate on the issue of the revised targets, particularly on the from 80 to 60, all we are saying is that we are only responding to the cases that we are going to finalize, but not the cases that we are going to receive. So we can receive as many cases, but we're saying in terms of finalization, we'll do the 60. And more so because of the challenge that we have, because in many departments, which are key in giving us documentation to help us to finalize the cases, such officials will be working remotely. Some of them might not be able to be at their workstation by the time we need the information. It might take longer. And we know that. That's why we build it in terms of our targets. And for an example, even at the commission now, we have got 15 officials who are on self-isolation. So we do note that there are times where we might be having unpredictable environment or number of officials, both with us or even in the departments that we work with. And as such, that might even be tricky to finalize what we had hoped, which is 80%. But all the cases that will come, honorable members, they will be attended to, and with speed and with sense of urgency, and without compromising the quality of such investigations. Just to say lastly, honorable members, the in-year monitoring report, which includes all the costs related to COVID, Commission submits them to National Treasury on monthly basis. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, Commissioner. Back to you, Minister. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I think the teachers have done a good job. Just to emphasize here and there,
Can the minister put his video on and speak to the nation? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm muted. Am I audible now?
No, you're audible, but your video is on mute.
Oh, okay. Let me mute it. Thank you. I just wanted to say on the decline of the fiscus of the state, just one statement to make, two statements to make. The first one is that this needs to be, and I believe it is the focus of the public South African government, that we should improve our economy first by focusing on economic growth. And that will result into the improvement of the fiscus. And that is priority number one as far as I'm concerned, not only of us now, but of strict administration. And therefore, while working, we are not shifting our eye on the need.
The minister is not audible enough.
Not audible enough.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what else to do because I think I'm new and
you are better. You are better now. Yeah. Just stick to that.
I'm better
yes.
now.
Yes.
All right, sorry about it. I'm just saying on the decline, there's no other miracle. We just have to improve and grow the economy of the country, and then improve the fiscus and join in terms of making sure that wastages are cut to the limit and so on. I just wanted to make a statement. Now, on the paperless issue, which the Honorable Lisoma touched on, I just want to say maybe the select committee need to get interested in this matter. We take it that part of our responsibility as DPSA is to ensure that e-government and modernizing government generally needs to go on and is our responsibility. But there is an empowering entity called the SITA, the State Information Technology Agency, which has not been allocated. It's still being dealt with by the presidency, and it's for a long time now. So it's floating somewhere between us and the communication Department of Communication, because when we started this term, it was in telecommunications, but before that it was in DPSA, and President didn't allocate it, and it's a kind of a bone of contention a little bit. I think we need to, because it's regarded by officials in our department, something that will enable them to go on with modernizing government in a much more effective way. Clean audit, they have committed themselves. All I want, I stand with you as the portfolio committee on this one, that we need clean audit. And we want all CFOs, the portfolio, when they talk, they must first talk about clean audit, that they are on course, they are going to, and we emphasize it all the time. And then DGs as accounting officers, we also remind them all the time, you must account for money that is allocated to you. That is the first and foremost thing. Otherwise, we remain focused on zero budgeting. I think they've counted, but one element thereof is that it will mean each department will have to know exactly what they want to do and what to prioritize, because Treasury will come with a clean slate, as they are saying that there's no baseline. So when you put your matters on the zero budgeting process, that you are asking Treasury to fund them, it means that you have to be very clear why you need them, your motivation, your costing, your impact overall on the overall goals of government and so on. So there's a lot of work that we will need to do there. I'm just emphasizing that indeed they are there. On Tau, I thought the DG at DPSA will indicate actually that the posts have been advertised. I don't know when they are closing. All I'm saying to maybe you need to give us some 1 minute just to say, yes, we have advertised, yes, we are closing, and then we are starting the process of appointing. Because I know that has been done. Adverts have been done, and I'll be shocked if they haven't closed, and they should be giving us dates to interview and appoint. But otherwise, we're on course on that. They have covered all other matters, and the next one that I wanted to cover was no. I think all of them have been now covered, except to say, of course, if what we are doing in government now in terms of what people now want to refer as austerity measures, which we argue were not on austerity measures. We're merely saying, let us ensure we don't waste, and that will stay on course on that one. But if the current measures, including those that are imposed by COVID, prove that we can do whatever we need to do, of course, we'll line up and align ourselves with such expenditure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for the comprehensive response to the questions, leading the team. Honorable members, the department and its entities has responded.
Sorry, Chair.
I want to
Sorry, Chair.
just give I think it's to the minister said DG, we might just give 1 minute just to indicate the process where the process of selection and recruitment, where is it thus far? DG?
Chairperson?
The DG, yes, the issue of the advert that the minister raised.
Oh yes, we advertised for the technical advisory unit, chief director, and 1 director position there for discipline management. The positions have closed. We've put panels together. We're targeting the month of July to be able to do the interviews for the posts. So that process is ongoing. Minister has given us deadlines to ensure that by a certain time frame, appointments must have been made, which is why we're pushing for July to do interviews, Chairperson.
Thank you.
And Chairperson, sorry, Chairperson,
yes.
Just to again confirm that the positions are in the structure. There are 2 directors currently who are part of that structure as it is. 1 has been appointed an acting chief director, so the unit is functioning. These 2 directors were responsible for ethics and integrity in the department in the previous structure, and they have since been transferred to the technical unit, and they are part of the core team that is currently running with the unit. They have some other positions below them that report to them. Thank you.
Thank you. There is
Chairperson, if I may.
Is there any follow-up question?
Yes, Chairperson, I believe there was one question missed regarding the wage bill negotiations. I don't think the Minister addressed it.
Yes, Minister.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry about that.
No problem,
Sorry
Minister.
about that. Now, we did report last time that after all had been said and done, we had to go to conciliation, and we couldn't agree. We then had to go to arbitration. And while we were at arbitration, waiting for dates to sit on arbitration, where one of the unions took us to labor court. We have since taken an approach that sought to combine the labor court case and arbitration, and we while we were approaching the arbitrator on that matter, there was no agreement up to when we then had to approach the labor court on our own to apply for a stay of arbitration pending the sitting of the case at the labor court, because we felt we needed to streamline the case so that we don't sit at arbitration and afterwards we sit at the labor court on the same issues, same arguments, same everything. we needed to economize a bit. So where we are now, we on Friday there will be an argument why we are wanting the stay, and then proceed to labor court. That's where we're heading to with all the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for covering that point in terms of where we are with the engagement on the wage bill. Honourable members, I want to believe that the team has comprehensively responded to the questions that were posed around the presentations. When we started, we said it is important to get a sense in terms of what are the key areas on the budget that will be affected, that will be adjusted, the amount, where is it moved from, where is it going. The department, the entities, I want to believe that they have done justice to that question, and I think what is important is the underlying point raised by the minister, that indeed the strat plan remains unchanged, and that it remains intact. Of course, there are a number of programs under the APP that were identified in directing of resources to meet the intervention by National Treasury. And I believe that when it comes to the department further, there has been an issue around the revision and reduction of the annual targets. Likewise, with the issue of the various entities, I want to believe that there was clarity of thought from the National School of Government around the issue around face-to-face initiative, revenue generating, whether are we sticking to 20 learners. They were clear, 50 learners, so that the issue around social distancing becomes the order of the day. The revision around the revision downwards around training numbers and revenue generation targets, these areas were engaged, and issue around remote working arrangements has been covered. How the goods and services across the entities and the department has been affected. Issue around central public service, issues around the impossibility of site visit and a response around that. The issues around virtual innovation workshops and conferences has been indicated, but I think more than that, I think the issue around the personnel expenditure review, the technical unit, the team has responded accordingly at the level of the DPSA, but also I think at the change of emphasis on the Public Service Commission, particularly putting more emphasis on the education around the ensuring that the return of pupils to our schools, their safety is not compromised. So therefore, they will be putting much more emphasis in terms of the readiness around PPEs, and also is physical distance observed. Key to this is that in a nutshell, the target as encapsulated in the MTSF remains unaffected. Those programs remains in place. Of course, what is affected is reduction in terms of targets, movement of targets, but also ensuring that they remain on course. I want to believe that they have done justice to those areas of our expectations that we set right at the beginning of the meeting. And with that, if members are happy, let me then take this opportunity to, on behalf of the joint committees.
Sorry, Chair.
Hello.
Sorry, Chair. Is the secretary of the PC?
Sibeko.
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
just to record, Chairman, for record purposes, Chair. I did not want to stop the meeting in the beginning, as we were just worried about time. Can we take note of the apologies, Chair, of two apologies for the committee? Honorable James Jojo, our chairperson, and Honorable Memo Tsepe, who were not able to attend the meeting. Those are the two apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Dades Beko. I did raise the apology of the chair right at the beginning. Of course, I was not aware of the apology of Mtsepe. Members, those are the apologies. Let's record them for the purpose of the proceedings. But more than that, I think we are happy. Let me express our sincere gratitude to the Minister and the team, the Public Service Commission, the National School of Government, the Center for Innovation, and also Public Service Commission. Lastly, to you honorable members, I know it was a long day. My sincere gratitude to your commitment, to your sterling work. The meeting is now formally adjourned. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Don't leave the chair.
Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Chair.
You always feel like you